This is Americana Podcast, the 51st State. Welcome to Americana Podcast, where we examine the artists and the ideas that define American roots music, both in its foundations and its fringes. Today's guest is Steve Poltz, an artist who exists at the intersection of tradition and unpredictability. With a career that spans decades and defies easy categorization, Poltz is as much a storyteller as he is a songwriter. Part troubadour, part trickster, and wholly original. Born in Nova Scotia and raised in Southern California, Poltz emerged from the indie folk circuit in the 1990s, gaining mainstream attention as the co-writer of Jewel's chart-topping hit, You Were Meant for Me. But his broader significance lies in how he's consistently challenged the expectations of Americana as a genre. His work embodies the ethos of folk music, oral tradition, narrative, and community, while embracing a postmodern playfulness that keeps audiences guessing. In this episode, you'll find that we explore humor, vulnerability, and improvisation functions as a creative tool in his songwriting. You're also going to hear a very lengthy talk about books, which is something that we love on this podcast. We'll also consider his place in the Americana canon as a bridge between the DIY folk punk scenes of the West Coast and the narrative-driven lineage of American roots music. Be sure to check out the live version of You Were Meant for Me with Steve Poltz and the Robert Earl Keen Band on the official Robert Earl Keen YouTube channel. But it's a really, really cool performance. I highly recommend it, even if I wasn't the producer of this show. It's beautiful, and Steve is an incredible musician. Steve Poltz just doesn't perform songs. He creates a world, and today we're stepping into it. I'm your producer, Clara Rose, and this is Americana Podcast, the 51st State.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Earl Keen, and you're listening to the Americana Podcast, the 51st State. And we are here with our guest, Steve Poltz. I'm so happy to have you here, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
Yeah, man. I want to just say, before we get started, we have been on a long break, and we're back, and we are making some changes in our format, where we always considered Americana, the mission statement was to define and expand Americana. And we have decided what we're going to do with that and take it a little further. And we are definitely going to define it a little bit broader and really expand it, because we're going to bring on some guests. Of course, our mainstay is singer-songwriters like Steve Poltz here today. But we're going to bring in some movie directors and some novelists and even some food people and maybe a few fashion people here along the way. And this is the beginning of the new and improved Americana Podcast. And so I think this is great, because I've been wanting to talk to you for the longest time, Steve. And one of the first things I'd like to ask you, or first tell you, that when we talk to people about Americana, we'd say, who is like the cornerstone of Americana? And almost about 90% all say John Prine. And I understand that you have a John Prine story, or you know John really well. And so I thought maybe I would start with that.
Well, first of all, he's sorely missed.
Yeah.
And I discovered him in the 80s, believe it or not, a long time ago, when we had a scene happening in San Diego, California. And there was this band, the Beat Farmers.
Love the Beat Farmers.
Yeah.
Country Dick.
Country Dick.
Yeah, man.
And he and Mojo Nixon, another guy we lost, they were my teachers. And so they really were. And Country Dick, I was in the Rugburns, and Country Dick played on the record, and Buddy Blue, who was in the Rugburns, produced the record. And we traveled and we were on the road, and everything would always be like, this is a John Prine song. Check this out. And we would speak of John Prine. And if you knew, you knew. It was one of those things. And so I never thought I would meet him. I knew I could learn his songs. And I was in Ireland, and I was traveling around Ireland. And I don't know if you've been to Ireland.
Yes, I have.
Those are my people. I just feel like I feel so at home there. They love stories, they love songs, and they have that mischievous grin and their eyes twinkle. And so I was playing on the streets. I was just a street musician, and these guys invited me in because they felt sorry for me. I was playing for Pass and Change, and they said, "Where are you going to stay tonight?" And I was in Tralee, Tralee. And Tralee is where they have the famous Rose of Tralee, where they crown a girl the Rose of Tralee. And she's the belle of the ball, the beautiful girl in the valley. And so I stayed at these guys' house, and they would go to work. It was 3 guys, and they had every John Prine record. It was 1988 up to 88. They had everything John Prine had done on vinyl. And so I would listen to these records by John Prine while they'd go to work. And it was back, obviously pre-YouTube and all this stuff, where if I wanted to learn a song, I'd have to put on the record, lift it up, maybe scratching the record, trying to find out, wait, what did he say? And you may see me tonight with an illegal smile. It don't cost, it don't cost, it don't cost, it don't cost. And I'd have to lift it up and try to figure out the chords. And so I learned every John Prine song, and I would play them on the streets for Passing Change. And then I came back to San Diego, ended up getting a record deal with my band, The Rugburns. We were traveling around all the time. And then I had this hit song I wrote with Jewel, and me and Jewel, we were dating each other and fell in love. And we wrote this song called You Were Meant for Me. Well, around that time, I got a record deal on my own with Mercury Universal. It was a big record deal back when they used to give big record deals, and they would give you a lot of money. Like they gave us like $100,000 just to make a video and close down a block in downtown Los Angeles. Like it was crazy the money they would throw into these things. And so Al Bonetta, who was managing John at the time, he called me up, and he would always come to my shows when I'd come through Nashville, and he'd invite me over to his Frog Hollow farm that he had. And he would have this big wrought iron gate, and you'd pull up to it. And Al Bonetta would come out and greet you. You'd have to talk into the intercom, and he'd say, "Folk music built this." That was always his line. He loved talking about Stevie Goodman. He loved talking about John Prine and how they started Oh Boy Records. And so John Prine was coming through San Diego one day, and I was out surfing, and I came home, and the show was sold out. He was at Spreckles Theater. And so there was a message on my machine, and it was Al Bonetta. He goes, "Steve, it's Al Bonetta. John Prine's in town. Give me a call back immediately." And I said, "Oh, he's calling me up to give me tickets to the gig." Because, a manager for another act a lot of times will do that. They want musicians in the room, and it's kind of like a thing we do for each other. But I'd never met John Prine. And so sure enough, I called him back, and I said, "Hey, Al, it's Steve Poltz." And I'd just gotten out of the water surfing. I had my board shorts on. I was eating a burrito, had 6 rolled tacos with guacamole. And then he goes, "Steve, John Prine needs to go to the Disney store. You need to give him a ride to the Disney store. It's the last night of his tour. He's got to get toys for his kids." And I went from thinking he was going to offer me tickets because I said the show's sold out. And all he said was, "That's too bad. You got to pick up John Prine and take him to the Disney store." Well, if you could have seen me, I was like Snoopy. "Are you kidding? I can pick John Prine up in my Volkswagen van?" He goes, "But you got to go now." I said, "Where's he staying?" He goes, "He's at the Horton Grand Hotel." Well, the Horton Grand Hotel is right next to Horton Plaza, where the Disney store is. So had I been a true gentleman, I would have just said, "Tell John he can walk next door. The Disney store is right next door. I can get all the toys he needs." But I'm not going to do that. I want to get him in my van, right? So I drive down to pick him up, and he comes out of his hotel. And he sees me, and I got 2 surfboards in the back of the van. I got broken John Prine CDs on the ground. I didn't have time to clean out the van. There's melted surf wax. My burrito's on top of a John Prine CD. Sweet Revenge is a CD. John Prine gets into the van, and he opens the door, and when he does, John Prine's own CD falls out with a bean burrito on it, and it's cracked. And he picks it up, looks at it, looks in my van, and he goes, "I love what you've done with the place." And he gets in the van, and rather than drive him next door, I go, I'll get on Interstate 5 South in San Diego and I'll start driving south. Well, as you know, being the guy that's traveled across the world as you have so many times, Mr. R.E.K., you know when you're in San Diego, you're 25 minutes from Tijuana. So I get on 5 South and I start driving in 5 South. I'm so excited to get in my van. I was just going to go down 2 exits, come back up, go to the underground garage, and John Prine would never know that he was in a mall next door to his hotel. But instead, I forget what I'm even doing because I'm so happy he's in my van. I'm driving him. All of a sudden, there's a sign and it says, Tijuana, 5 miles. And John Prine sees the sign and he goes, is the Disney store in Mexico? And then I go, no, we're almost there. So then I turn around and get on 5 North, like this guy has no sense of direction. I'm on 5 North and he goes, weren't we just on 5 South? And I drive to the underground garage, get him in, I lead him into the Disney store. And then he says something I'll never forget. He goes, I got to call my wife Fiona because I can never remember if I already got him these toys. And then he looks me right in the eyes and he goes, and they never forget. And when he said that, in my mind, I remember thinking, that's why you're John Prine. Most people might just say, I got to call my wife. Like, I can't remember if I got him this. But he was like what my mom used to say about songwriting. Who was there? What happened? And how did it make you feel? And when he said, and they never forget. So he's on the phone to Fiona. Tommy and Jack are his kids who are now grown up. Tommy's got a career of his own. He's touring, but they were little kids back then. And so he's talking to Fiona on the phone to see what he needs to get him. As he does, he looks up and you can see the sign next door blinking, Horton Grand Hotel. I look at John and then he looks at me and he looks back at the hotel sign and then he looks at me with the look of fear in his eyes. He takes the phone, holds it to his chest so Fiona can't hear, and he goes, isn't that my hotel? And then I say to him, they must have moved it. Like it was an episode of Lost or something. And then even I believed my own bullshit. And so then he says to me, are you going to take me back to my hotel? Or should I just walk so I don't end up in Mexico? So by now it's becoming a Stephen King novel where it's like I'm going to take him home like the movie Misery and chain him to my bed and hobble his feet so he can't walk and make him write me my own John Prine songs. But instead I go, get in the van, John. And he goes, what? And I go, the van, get in the van. And he does. He gets back in the van, not once bitten, twice shy. The guy gets back in the van. I drive him across the street to his hotel. And before he gets out, he goes, are you coming to the show tonight? And I go, no, I don't have tickets. It's sold out. And he says, now you do. And I said, well, let me give you my name. And he goes, I know who you are. My manager warned me about you. So that night I go to the show. He gives me front and center seats, 2 seats. And he walks out on stage and he sees me. And he kind of leans down and winks at me. Cocks his head to me and winks. So I just want to say, God bless John Prine.
Wow. That pretty much encapsulates the whole John Prine world, doesn't it, man?
Yeah.
That is so amazing. So if after that, we can move on to like catching up. What have you been doing lately?
So, you know what's funny is coming over today and being with you is really neat because for those of you that are out there listening, we're out in the country here in Nashville and in this really cool wood paneled house with a lot of old guitars. Robert's lovely daughter engineering this. It's a whole family affair. And so I've been traveling a lot as usual, as it's what we do. We're singers and we're troubadours and we go out and we serve up medicine. You know, we go out, we make people feel good. We're doing God's work in a weird way. Like we are. We're going out, hopefully if we're doing it right, and we're making folks forget about how crappy the world can be. And everybody's got their own problems. And so that's the only thing that really keeps me going and keeps me never getting scared. Even when I opened for you at Floor's Country Store and we were in out in Elotes, Mexico, which is outside of San Antonio. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to get killed. There's 2,000 people outside and they want to hear Robert Earl Keen. And I remember I said, you know, I normally don't get scared. I'm a little scared. And you go, oh, no, just be you. My fans love songwriters. They like stories. And I went out, I was just embraced. And so I've been out there traveling, playing songs, writing songs. I need to make a new record. So I'm thinking about that right now and just doing what it is we do, which is so weird how quick the time goes. I mean, doesn't it seem like just the other day you were on a couch next to Lyle Lovett talking about a big old heifer, and a steaming greasy plate of enchiladas?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you remember those moments?
Oh yeah, I do. You're right. It takes you. Your mind takes you back to those moments, and sometimes they're really crystal. I mean, in your brain, they just get that way, and fortunately, we just don't forget them. I mean, that's the main thing. I think a lot of being part of a singer-songwriter is having an ability to grasp those different moments and pull them into a song one way or another, whether it's emotional or it's a setting sort of thing put together. So
did you? Let me ask you one more quick question. Did you know Larry McMurtry?
I've met Larry, and I went to Larry's his place in Archer City.
I love it. Those bookstores.
Did you go?
Yes, I figured you'd been there.
Yes, I know. And the signs they have in each one of them. There's just so people know that have never been to Archer City or know a lot about Larry McMurtry. He was a book collector as much as he was, a writer, and he had 3 huge buildings, like old churches or old community buildings, and they were stacked the ceiling with books. But right in the front of them, there was a sign that said, "Questions that we can answer without you asking us." And the first one is, "Larry is not here."
Yes.
Larry will not be here.
And he won't sign your book.
If Larry's here, he won't sign your book. All right. It just kept going, okay, well, we don't want to talk to Larry, then obviously that's just not going to work for you. But
the smell when you walked in of those books.
Yeah, no.
And isn't that where they filmed The Last Picture Show?
I'm not sure they did in Archer City, but they filmed it in all around there. But my thought is Archer City was the town that was the setting for The Last Picture Show, and that it was Thalia, and that they called that town Thalia. But I think that was Archer City, and as far as I know, I didn't see any of like the street exactly or the old picture show place or anything. But it certainly could have been, as far as like just the way that the whole that really oddball part of Texas, which is just like people don't know about it.
They don't.
And people don't go there because there's basically just miles and miles and miles of pasture land.
And it's on the honor system. When you buy the books, it's like you just put the money in. Like he just trusts you.
Right.
And what I like about you too is your texts, when you text me, they're really well written. Like you don't text like a Gen Xer or I'm trying to think of what even the younger group is. Yours are well written.
I have
text.
Adults that write stupid text that you need to get out the code book and try to figure out what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
It just always just drives me crazy. And sometimes, like, depends on my mood, I'll say, "Can you please try to write an entire sentence that I can understand?" But the thing is, it's just I do think that, like, texting is one of our main forms of communication these days, and you want to communicate well.
Yeah.
So that's basically my thought. So I just write them like a letter. "Hey, dear Steve,"
Yeah.
Or, "Hola, Steve."
Did you ever have a book did you have a book you remember reading that changed your life? Because for me, mine was called The Razor's Edge by William Somerset Maugham.
Yeah.
And Maugham is Maughm. Somerset is Sommer. Yeah. That book changed my life, The Razor's Edge, because the protagonist in the story, Larry Darrell was his name. He just wanted to go bum around Europe. And I remember I got this job, graduated from University of San Diego, Toreros, Catholic University. And there was a job listing thing, and my parents said, "You can't move home. You've got to get a job." And I played guitar, but I was too scared to really follow my muse yet. So the job listing said plastics salesman. So the night before the interview, there was these two girls that lived next to me right on the beach, Kiara and Elizabeth. Kiara Tellini, a blonde Italian girl who was just beautiful, and they were really nice and funny. And it was 1 a.m. I was coming home from a bar, and I had to go do a 8:30 a.m. job interview the next day. And it was 1 a.m. They said, "Hey, Steve, have you ever taken magic mushrooms?" And I said, "No, but I want to." And they said, "Come over. We just got some." And we ate mushrooms. And they didn't kick in till 3 a.m. And I remember sitting on their counter, opening a can of Coors and pouring it into my crotch. And they said, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know why." And then we all got in the bathtub in our clothes and then let the shower run on us. And I told them to get a dozen eggs out of the fridge back when they used to be cheap. And they got a dozen eggs and they cracked them over my head. And I remember it was 7 a.m. and my roommate came in and I had egg on my face and 2 girls with me, and we're laughing. We were spray painting the walls. And they said, "You got a job interview." And I went into this job interview and I got the job. And I had like a thrift store pinstripe suit that I duct taped the pants up. But I went in that job interview and the mushrooms were still kicking in because I'd eaten more. And I was like Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was like Tony Robbins. And I started talking to this guy. I was speaking a language of sales talk. It was almost like I became a shapeshifter. And I was amazed at how quick my mind and how facile my mind was. And I remember he wrote down a number. He put 18.5. He was offering me a salary and he slid it across. I didn't know what that meant. He handed it over because we were negotiating a salary. He liked me so much. And I took that piece of paper and I scratched it on and I wrote 15.2 because I didn't know what the game was. He was like, "Why would you take less?" And then I realized, I said, "I take less because I'm so sure of what I can do. I want back end in sales. I want this. I need a car. Can you give me a company car?" He said, "You got the job. Here's the keys." I said, "Can I pick it up Monday?" Because I was shrooming so heavily. I kept that job from 85 to 88, and he paid for my first PA so I could play in a bar on Saturday nights because I didn't have a PA. He loaned me the money. I paid him back. I read the book, The Razor's Edge by William Somerset Maugham, and that book inspired me to go travel and be a bum on the streets of Europe and play for passing change. And that's the beauty of literature. So I know you've probably read a book, and did you ever think it just has always stuck with you?
There are many books that stuck with me. My favorite book is Henderson, the Rain King by Saul Bellow. And
I'm going to read it next.
It's amazing. It didn't change my life in that I did anything that happens in that book. It's just what it did was, well, number one, the writing is so good. It's
Saul
pristine.
Bellow.
Yes, pristine writing, and it's a great story. And there's a part at the very end where he's having kind of a backflash moment, and it was he was talking about his brother that his dad loved the most had died, and he felt like he was really outcast then. So he went out of town and got a job at an old like roller coaster ride kind of place, like that. You like the one down on the boardwalk, say in Santa Cruz. Yeah, like that. With the. And he also had to take care of this old bear that this guy that had the bear had treated poorly, and the bear was in bad shape, and he was really old, and all he could do then was actually drink milk out of a bottle, and everybody would clap when he drank milk out of a bottle. But they lived in a barn, and he slept with this old bear. And then the other part that he would do that was entertainment would be he would get on the roller coaster with the bear, and they would ride this roller coaster. And this description is just heartbreaking and so beautiful.
I can't wait to read it.
Could never get over that. And that doesn't almost have much to do with the whole story in the whole thing.
Any book with a bear,
but he's just
though,
talking about how he was trying to connect the dots in his brain about how animals had changed his life. And so he when he connected this whole thing with the bear, he decided that he was more of a bear person than a pig person because he used to he used to raise pigs, and he felt like the raising of pigs had cursed his life, and that he lived like a pig all the time.
Yeah.
But fact is, it's like he got back to this memory of this bear and decided, no, I'm not a pig, I'm a bear. You do?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful piece. Wonderful piece. So that was, that's one of the ones that really always sticks with me.
You're listening to Literature Talk with Steve Poltz and Robert Earl Keen.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I can discuss literature all day. My mom was an English teacher. That's
Really?
a beautiful description.
Yeah. You should read it. It's really good. So let me ask you this. Born in Halifax, right?
Yes.
You ever written a song with the word Halifax in it?
Yes.
Oh,
I
you
have
have?
a song called The Windows of Halifax.
Oh, nice.
And in the song, it's a window talking to another window.
Oh.
And so the windows have this discussion, and the one window's bummed because everybody comes in and they're just getting drunk and they're you would flick your beer caps?
Uh-huh.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah, I used to do that a lot, and would flick in the window, and they'd throw their cigarette butts against the window.
Yeah.
And the window is in love with this other window. But the window always has its shade pulled down and never lets the sun in. And so the whole song is about that. It's called The Windows of Halifax. Great question.
Fantastic. I love that.
Yes, I have written songs with Halifax.
Yeah. So do you know all the provinces of Canada?
Let's see here. You got your Atlantic province where Newfoundland is.
Yes.
And you have Nova Scotia.
Right.
You have Alberta, which is one of my favorites because of the songwriters like Ian Tyson, who wrote Four Strong Winds.
Right.
And you've got Ontario, and I got to know Gordon Lightfoot, who lived in Orillia, Ontario.
Yes.
So you've got that, and then you've got your Manitoba, where Winnipeg is, and you've got your Saskatchewan, where Regina is, and they always have these T-shirts that say Regina rhymes with fun. That's the T-shirts they sell in the airport there, Regina. And then you got your British Columbia, and you've got your territories, your northern territories, like Nunavut and Yukon territories.
You know this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, fantastic.
Yeah, I love Canada, and all my relatives live there. I can sing the national anthem. My dad was in the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Right.
And so
is the national anthem kind of like a British song as well? I mean, does it
their national
have
anthem
a tune like a British song?
It's like, "Oh Canada, our home and native land." Although some of the people that are angry that they took the land from First Nations people, they say, "Oh Canada, we're on your native land." Some people say true patriot love, and then they used to say "in all of his command," but then they made "all of us command." You know how like language, everything always changes over the years. So it goes, "In all of us command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee." Play hockey. And then they go into it. But yeah, my dad used to wake me up and sing me that song. And
Yeah. Your dad was part of your musical career?
My dad and my mom, My dad would write poems, and he was really funny, and my mom was a taskmaster. She said, I was kind of raised by this Uncle Louie, my mom's brother, and so he moved. My mom's from Cape Breton. You know Cape Breton?
No.
That's beautiful. That's like where they have all the fiddle music and everything, and that's on the East Coast. So my uncle, in the early 60s, we all moved down to Canada. My uncle was gay. And if he was gay up there in Cape Breton, that was like Brokeback Mountain type stuff where you get beat up. So he moved down to Los Angeles, where we moved to. And my uncle was one of my biggest influences. So it was funny being raised kind of by this gay uncle, because it was a time when things weren't like they are today with LGBTQ plus and all the flags. No, this was like some down low shit going on. And so my uncle would always have like a different boyfriend at Christmas time. He would invite him over, and all these people, and they would sing musicals. And so my uncle would be sitting there, and I thought everybody was raised this way, so it was kind of funny. So my uncle would raise me on like Liza Minnelli and Barbara Streisand and all these songs, and I would go over to a friend's house, and they would go put on Ozzy Osbourne, and they go, "What do you want to hear next?" And I go, can you put on some Streisand? And they were wondering, what the hell's wrong with you? But like my uncle took me to the Hollywood Bowl to see Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Carmen McRae. He took me to see Julian Bream play classical guitar. And that really influenced me. He was really into the arts, but he also took me to all the early Planet of the Apes movies. He took me to see Jesus Christ Superstar, the musical. Took me to see Hair, like some edgy stuff. And so he would sit there and he would dress me up like Oliver, and he would have his friends over, and that's where I first started singing. I would do parts from Oliver, and it would be like, oh, by this wonderful morning, such a sky you never did see. And then, where is love? And then I was in all the choirs. I was in madrigals. I was on the wrestling team and madrigals. But none of the people on the wrestling team could know I was in madrigals or they'd kick my ass. Madrigals was the top singing group. And we would sing songs in Latin, French, Italian, like Fa una canzone senza note nere, se mai bramasti la mia grazia vere. So we'd be competing against other schools. And I was on the wrestling team. And I was on the cross country team. And I played Little League Baseball. I did it all.
Yeah.
I really did. I was lucky. And I had a really busy mind. And so I was able to read like 3 things at once and practice classical guitar and learn all these songs. And then my other cousin moved in. He came home from Vietnam. He moved in with us, and my Uncle Louis, the gay uncle, was living with us. So we had a gay uncle living with us, and my other uncle came home from Vietnam, and my mom, I'll never forget this, she goes, your Uncle Louis is living here, and he's a homosexual. And your Uncle Steve's home from Vietnam, and he has venereal disease. He has VD. And then she goes, don't use the towels. And so I would like go out front with like a hose and hose myself off. I was like, what's it mean? What's VD? And then my Uncle Lee, what's it mean? He's homosexual. And I grew up watching Laugh-In, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. And then the Smothers Brothers was my first taste of how you could be subversive and sneaky. How they got Pete Seeger to come on. And he was, blacklisted. And then my uncle gave me Bob Dylan, Bringing It All Back Home. And he would give me these records, and I would listen to Blonde on Blonde. I'd listen to Bringing It All Back Home. And I heard Dylan. I went, who sings like that? How can he do this? Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside a mobile with those Memphis blues again. And then the more I traveled, the more I went out there. And then I eventually got turned on to your music through hearing Lyle Lovett talk about you in interviews. So I discovered you. Lyle Lovett was my gateway drug to you. And I remember the first time I heard you say, like, she brought home her boyfriend and he was a Mexican. I was like, you can say that? This is so cool. And I was listening to the Beat Farmers. So, listening to you and the way your writing was so literate, yet also funny. So it was literate, it was funny, it was poignant, and it could take you on a journey, and it told a story. So you are an American treasure. You really are. Like you've added to the canon of what we call Americana music. And, one of my best friends is Bob Schneider, and he's so mad that he hasn't played your thing yet that I played. He really wants to. He goes, I met Robert Earl Keen once. He goes, I love Robert Earl Keen. And Bob Schneider, we probably I talk to him more than anybody just because we're always on the road and I'm light and he's dark. And so our energies are together. And he's always like, how do you like everybody? Because I like everybody. I like the busboy at Denny's. I like the waitress at Waffle House. I like America. I like going and meeting people in rural areas. I like discussing things. I like discussing how did NAFTA change our country? I like hearing from people. I like hearing, what caused this opioid epidemic? Was it a lack of hope? What can we do to bring that hope back? And so that's what I love about music and traveling, this great country of ours. Right.
Well, I think you're doing the right thing. I think you inspire some hope here when you get out there, get out there and play. I mean, I'm enthralled and admire your ability to just jump on that stage and set it on fire right off the bat. I mean, it's amazing, really, really amazing. And I want to talk. I really want to talk to you about this. the years have gone by. The amount of solo artists have just almost disappeared, and you just don't see it. And that's and I think the solo artist is kind of the most pure form of songwriting and performance, and particularly Americana. It fits right in with Americana. And as a solo performer, you have a certain amount of flexibility that bands don't always have. And I wonder in terms of what's your whole take on just being a solo performer, as much as you can explain that to me.
I want to be the best me I can be, so I'm constantly taking an ice pick to this block of ice that is, if you could call it, my show. So it starts, and it's an empty page, and I go out there. I don't even know what I'm going to open with. I just know something magic's going to happen, and I'm looking for that spark. So my take is, I want to go out, and I want to take people on a journey. I really want them to forget about whatever it is. I'm honored that they chose to come to see me. They could have watched YouTube videos. They could have watched something on HBO Max or whatever. Right. But instead, they chose to come see me. I want to honor that. That's like a big leap of faith. They're taking their money they earned, and they're coming to see me. To maybe I can take them and give them a smile and let them forget about everything else. Right. And when they leave, the best compliment I can ever have is when somebody comes up afterwards and they say this: "When are you coming back?" That's when you know you did your work. I know you've heard that a million times. When are you coming back? I'm going to bring 20 friends with me. Right. And so my thing is, I want to go out there and I want to craft a story. I don't want dead air. I want to bring, not that I have anything against that. I think there's no one way. There's a million ways to do a show. Right. For me, I think the reason I became quick on my feet and quick with my mind is because I stuttered when I was a kid. I had asthma, I had eczema, I was unhealthy, I was really skinny, I got picked on. So I learned to talk my way out of trouble. And then my shows became a form of therapy in a weird way, because I used to play for my mom, and my mom suffered from depression, debilitating depression, where she was in and out of hospitals and had to get shock therapy in the 60s. And one time she got in, I remember she came back and didn't recognize me and didn't know who I was. And that really, really hurt. It hurt me, and it scared me, and it gave me this feeling of fear. So my youth was a lot of darkness. And my first memory was JFK getting shot and my mom crying, because I'm 65, and my memory was her ironing clothes and crying, and this black and white TV showing a funeral with a little kid saluting his father's flag-draped coffin. And that really affected me. And then the assassinations of Medgar Evers, of Martin Luther King, of Robert F. Kennedy, and all these people, and then overdoses, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, all these people dying so young, and drugs. And I remember my mom, suffering from this depression. And so I would play her songs on guitar. And I really believe the audience, in a weird way, my mom's now been dead a few years, but I believe the audience is like my mother. And I'm trying to seduce them, like trying to seduce her out of being depressed, trying to seduce her depression away from her, and seeing her smile was like the greatest thing I could do. And I wasn't always successful, but when I was, the payoff was big. And that's why this job is so hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And so I'm still nurturing that crowd, and I think I'm still trying to prove I'm good enough. I didn't make the basketball team. That's why I got on the wrestling team. I was a 98 pounder, but I only weighed like 92 pounds my 9th grade year. But I learned to wrestle, and I got really good at it. But I'm still trying to make the basketball team.
I want to ask you, Steve, about some of your co-writing that you've done. I see that you've done some stuff with Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle and some others. What's that process like for you, as far as getting together with somebody else and putting a song together?
That's a great question. I used to, when I was in San Diego, when you would meet up with people, you would go surfing. You go, let's go paddle out and catch one. Right. And this is like, let's paddle out into the songwriting world now, coming to Nashville. Yeah. And it seemed like, in a weird way, because I had that one jewel hit, You Were Meant for Me, that people were like, if he did it once, maybe that idiot can do it again. Let's write with him. And so people have wanted to write songs, and they've always been amenable to the idea of getting together and seeing what happens. I never have been through the thing where I've been set up on blind dates for writing with people. Like, I haven't had to go through that. And that might be good, it might be bad. I'm not on that Music Row thing where I'm there, we got to talk about a truck, God, Bible, and the girl, and fishing maybe. For me, it's been like, hey, Billy. I become friends with people. I meet them at festivals because I get to play a lot of festivals. Like, from Newport Folk Fest to High Sierra Music, which is a hippie fest, Newport Folk, to Telluride Bluegrass Fest. I get to play them all. I've been really fortunate. I get invited back again and again. And they never want me to bring a band. It's just me solo. And so when I'm backstage, I'll be with maybe somebody like Sierra Hull. And I'll say, hey, how's it been? She goes, we should write one. And I go, yeah, let's do it. And so Sierra Hull will come over. And that's what happened with Billy Strings. We played a festival together. And it was, what it was? It was Old Settlers. And Billy Strings played it, and he was on the smaller stage, before he blew up. And we started talking, and then he came over to the house and we wrote. And Molly Tuttle, I met her at Moss Tacos, taco joint here in town, which I go to, I frequent a lot, where I met Sierra Farrell and different people. And Molly was like, we should write a song. And I said, yeah. And so that got on her Grammy-winning records. And then there's just been a lot of different people that want to write songs. And so we just get together and see what happens. There's a guy in Nashville named Gary Nicholson.
I know Gary.
Yeah. And he's probably 75 years old. And I always wanted to write a song with Gary. And I moved to Nashville, and I was like, I really want to write a song with Gary Nicholson. And I went to see him at his gig, and I came up to him afterwards. I said, hey, my name's Steve Poltz. I'd like to write a song with you. And he was like, yeah, whatever. Email my son. It kind of blew me off. Yeah. And I understand everybody, he has all these hits with George Strait and all these people. And so I wrote his son, but didn't hear back. And my dad's very busy, blah, blah, blah. And I get it. I wasn't hurt. I just figured they call it a 7-year town. And if things are going to happen, they'll happen. And then one night, going back to John Prine, his son Tommy was playing. John had been passed on by now. But Tommy was supposed to play, but he got pneumonia. It was at this place called the East Side Revival. And I got a call from WMOT, a station. And they said, hey, Tommy can't play the show. It's in 3 hours. Will you play? I see you're in town. I go, yeah, I'll do it. I love those kind of moments, being thrown into a situation where nobody's expecting you and they want to see Tommy Prine. So Gary Nicholson shows up with my other friend who was in Hot Rise. Can't remember his name now, but
Tim O'Brien?
The other guy. He does E-Town.
Yeah. Nick
Forster. Yeah. So Nick Forster shows up with Sean Camp and Gary Nicholson. And they were going to leave because they were expecting Tommy Prine. They go, sorry, Tommy's sick, but we have Steve Poltz. Now, you could hear like the sound of one hand clapping. People are like kind of bummed. And I go out and they go, let's just listen to one song. Next thing I know, they stay for the whole show. And then he comes backstage, Gary Nicholson, and he goes, man, I need to write songs with you. And Nick Forster's like, I need to have you on E-Town and blah, blah, blah. And then that's how things happen.
Right.
And so then Gary goes, let's write a song. So now we've written like 10 songs.
Oh, great.
And now we talk all the time.
Yeah.
It's just funny how it works. And then Jim Lauderdale, the same thing. He's become one of my best friends. We've written 22 songs. We're going to do a duo record. So just living in this town, these opportunities present themselves. I would have never played Merle Fest had I not lived here, and I was up at a coffee house. Yeah. So great questions.
Yeah. So
you're good at this. You should have your own talk show.
Thank you very much. I'm Robert Earl Keane, and we're on the Americana podcast, the 51st State. We're talking to Steve Poltz. We're going to start wrapping it up here, Steve. So let me just say thank you, number one, and it's been a real pleasure, and I love seeing you play. Just love seeing you play. I do think that the solo performer and their songs is the most pure form of Americana. So when I go see you, I just think, this is it. This is what it's all about right here. This guy and these great songs and these great stories. That's the way it goes. So if he's ever coming to your town, don't miss him. I promise you, he's just fantastic. One thing I'd like to say, we like to ask this question on this show, and just no real thought to it, but the fact is like we believe that the B3 it's just a terrible name for such a beautiful instrument. It's just it sounds like a military piece or war thing. So if you got a chance to name the B3, what would you name it?
The Joseph Heller inaugural keyboard.
Is that like Catch 22?
Yeah,
or
because
something?
You said it's militaristic.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, there you go. There's the reference right there, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Heller.
I think is Steve Poltz a name for stardom, or should I change it to? Or do I need three names? Because you got Robert Earl Keen, and I'm just Steve Poltz. Maybe I should be Stevie Joe Poltz because my middle name's Joe.
How about just Stevie Joe?
Stevie Joe. There you go.
I always say, look, it's either serial killers or country singers. Three names, that's the thing. That's what you get there. And sometimes, there was a point where I was deciding one way or another whether I just use Robert Keane or Robert Earl Keen, but I was always Earl in school from the time I was in 8th grade all the way through the first year in college. So people call me Earl, and I always kind of just liked just being Earl. It was so much more, down to earth or something. But when I decided, I just went with Robert Earl Keen, and I just almost went with just Robert Keen. And then my brother said, "Are you stupid? You got to have three names if you're going to sing country." I said, "Okay, Robert Earl Keen." So once it was there, it was stuck, so I couldn't get out of it. But I don't mind it now. What happens is like if I want to get in into the doctor's office or something really fast.
Yeah.
I do what my wife calls I drop the Earl card. I go, yeah, I'm Robert Keane. I want to, see if I can get into the doctor to see him. Well, that'll be in sometimes in August. I'm like, it's March right now. Yeah. But I said, let me explain. My name is Robert Earl Keane. Oh, let me check. No, you can come on in. Yeah, great.
I like that.
Yeah, dropping the Earl card.
I'm going to do that to get a better place in line at Franklin Barbecue.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is Robert Earl Keane. And then I show up and they're like,
"No,
who's this hippie?"
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, this has been a great. I really enjoyed it, Steve. Steve Poltz, ladies and gentlemen, Americana Podcast, 51st State. My name is Robert Keane, but we have been talking to Steve Poltz and just had a delightful time. Thank you so much for your time and your talent. Unbelievable.
This
unmatched.
Is the greatest
unmatched,
podcast.
Man.
Greatest podcast I've ever been on.
Greatest podcast I've ever interviewed. So
who do I
you.
pay?
Yeah.